Don't go yet.
We're already going, Alex.
Yeah, I know, but we can edit. We can edit this bit out.
Or edit it in.
Share screen.
The bloopers are always good.
They are. Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of the Old World Behemoths podcast. My name is Alasdair. I am a behemoth because I took a dragon to a 1,500-point tournament. With me, I have Alex, Tom, and Chris, in no particular order, just the order in which they appear at the bottom of my screen. Chris, welcome. Why are you a behemoth?
I'm a behemoth because I play ogres.
Fabulous. Tom, why are you a behemoth?
Don't sell yourself short, Chris. You're a behemoth because you're number one ogres player in Australia.
I feel like we need to
I'm
check
a
that
behemoth,
every episode.
literally just because I'm a large human being. That's
I feel
my
like
only
we run
claim
the
to
same
fame.
script every time, so it's
And
like we should
it's-
just pre-record this
And
bit.
And it
it's
worked.
worth it. Alex, why are you a behemoth?
Because I'm getting fatter every day, and because of the
Aren't we
image
all?
on the left.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all is the sad continuation of our podcast. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Taking a moment just at the beginning of our podcast to acknowledge our patrons. And we've done it this time, ladies and gentlemen. We have made sure to include 25 Creative, our fabulous graphic design artist who helps us created our logo, helps us make sure that all of our slides look pretty for you, and makes sure that all of our video thumbnails, among other things, look very professional for YouTube. But thank you to our ongoing patrons, Death1942, Ghost, Joshua 6, Silver Dave, and Jeff. You help us keep the lights on and keep ourselves entertained at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. We've got an interesting episode for you this time around. Again, we're sort of pivoting into talking about a few bits and pieces that are upcoming, a tournament or two that are relevant to us, and then we'll get into our recent hobby. I think at this point I'm going to hand over to Alex, who's going to drive us through the next section of our podcast. Alex, what have you got for us?
I am. Well, first we have to acknowledge the genius artwork that we can see here that I've absolutely pillaged from Google.
Just for the sake of this being an audio medium, for
Yes,
many
this is
of
true. We
the
always
people who
forget
might be
this.
listening, could
We
you
always
describe
forget this.
the wonderful genius image
In
that we've got up on the
great
screen?
detail, you have a wide image here,
Oh, Alex, come on.
which has a Beastman gore on one side to the left.
I think you'll find it's a beast lord, Alex.
Okay, we'll go for that. We'll go
Chris,
for that.
you're not helping.
A wood elf battle against Empire happening. Is that Orion? That's
Looks it.
sitting there in his human
Initiating his hunt.
form. Yep, initiating something, followed by the classic Cathay image on the right, but all merged together into this beautiful Warhammer the Old World image, encapsulating what everyone is saying is the flow of the incoming armies. Beastmen first, Wood Elf second, Cathay last. I think we all knew that, right? We don't need.
Can I
an
just
image.
really appreciate the incorrectly centered text in the middle? It's really
You know where you wouldn't
I
find
love it.
incorrectly centered text? 25 Creative.
25
correct. Correct.
Oh, this is
That's
top
me.
tier Warhammer content.
Carry
Well,
on,
anyway,
Alex.
the
Take us
purpose
through.
of this, is that everyone is talking
You
about
can find the link in the description.
Warhammer rumors. And so we've got some pretty juicy ones, and you see a couple of the podcasts going through it. But I thought, on the same vein that I had to put Alistair through the Kislev speculation a few
And the
weeks
fact
ago,
that we have no real content.
exactly, I would put you guys through a couple of things. One being the Beastman magic lore, which has been rumored by Jav Goro, and to some of those who know who this person is, he's the prophet of the Warhammer Discord, fantasy Discord for the rumors, and he's basically showcased what the incoming magic lore is and the herdstone. So we're not going to be talking about any major.
Never heard of it.
Well, some might say the religion of rumor engines has not hit you yet, Alistair.
It's
You're a
about 15
non-believer.
years.
You're a
15 years
non-believer.
too late.
This is where all of our Patreon money goes to, by the way. Private investigation from Alex on the internet.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look at the first
have a
rumor.
look.
I believe we're looking at the rumored lore of beasts.
We are. Yes, we are. Yeah, and we'll rapid fire through these, right? And
Sorry, is there already a lore of beasts?
No, there is not. There used to be a lore of beasts. It was one of the 8 winds of magic, but it has not been represented in the old world.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm calling it Lore of Beasts, whatever it ends up being. Interesting, commentary which will follow once we quickly run through these. But again, expecting that Beastmen shamans, Minotaur shamans, which is another rumored part of the Minotaur arcane Army of Infamy, will be that a Doom Bull can be upgraded to a level 2 wizard. We'll probably be able to take some of this. Alice's face right now is like full.
And
He's got the salt. He's got the salt containers in his hands.
Just to clarify, so when this book does drop, does that mean that they'll lose access to things such as
No.
what's the
No. I know
no,
what
they
you're
can
talking
still
about,
take the Arcane
current.
Journal sort of stuff?
Well, presumably, right?
Arcane
Presumably.
Journal is pretty much always in addition.
They're like evergreen, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see, because you say they're evergreen, Chris, but the Chaos Arcane Journal introduced the giant spawn to Beastmen, and so perhaps Wood Elves might even get access to this Lore of Beasts in their Arcane
This
Journal.
is very
That's
true.
true.
There is
Yeah.
room for expansion. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Talk us through the lore. Let's not spend too much time.
Okay. So Primordial Gloom, a small template, 9+ to cast, which is very typical for a Vortex, 12-inch range. Units within 6 inches suffer -1 leadership. The brackets in enemy question mark is just that we don't have full confirmation on whether it's enemy units or all units that suffer that -1 leadership in there. Call of the Wild, conveyance spell, cast 8 again. They gain the reserve special move until the end of turn. Not something I would have seen or expected out of there, but not everything can be Arcane Urgency, I would suppose. And hold your commentary till we get to the end of this. Wildwood, Hex, target unit gains fear, moves to terror, very beneficial in this army, given that some of the big boys with big horns, I think, will be going after that. And Flock of Doom and Assailment, small blast, model sits up a strength 3, multi-wound 2, which is effectively just the Soul Eater.
But that I assume that well, I mean, obviously we don't know, but I assume the multi-wound is only in the center hole, so it'd only be one model.
Yeah.
Don't know.
We
Interesting.
don't know. Okay.
Carry on.
Quick fire. Alistair, number 1 spell on this page. What's your pick?
I think the conveyancing spell. I think conveyancing
Okay, you're
spells are
going
all,
conveyance?
Moves,
yeah, they're all very strong. And reserve move is a totally underrated rule.
Yep. Chris?
I'm actually gonna Call of the Wild is very, very good. I'm actually gonna go with Wildwood because I think the way that Fear and Terror works, if you can get Terror onto a big block of Beastmen, which they should be able to take a lot of guys in a unit, a lot of unit strength. That could go off quite a bit and cause a lot of problems.
Cause a lot of tests, but it wouldn't necessarily cause. But with leadership debuffs such as Primordial Gloom, that could be quite handy. And it's always Terror's always good on chaff units, etc.
I think it also depends on what it can be put on. So if it can be put on a Minotaur block, for example, I see exactly where you're coming from, because you get that represented in Empire with Demigryph Knights taking the Terror banner.
I also think some of the rumors that I've heard from this book is that a lot of their stuff is based around leadership stuff. Potentially you could get some quite good combos with that.
The Night Lords of Fantasy. Interesting.
Yep. Tom, top spell?
I'd say for consistency's sake, you'd want to go for Call of the Wild, because reserve moves, whenever you get that off, can be fantastic. And it doesn't feel as detrimental if you don't get it off, whereas Arcane Urgency does feel pretty bad when you don't get that off. If you sort of maneuver yourself into a particular position where you're relying on it, just having reserve move can be quite nice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the casting value here as 8 as well. Most of the conveyancing spells are 10.
Well, we'll get as we come down further some additional bonuses to casting, which actually will make these spells incredibly easy to cast. Which, yes, agreeing with that, coming down to 8.
I will point out one thing though. If the signature is correct in that, and if it impacts friendly units as well, I gotta call it out. That's a pretty garbage signature spell. If it impacts you as well, because
look, there are
such
garbage
a situational
signatures.
spell. Yeah.
Garbage signatures everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Doombolt is probably one of the worst signatures in the game, but we'll keep going. Fury of the Beast.
Ooh.
Interestingly, range self. The cast owner's unit gain the fight and extra rank special
I like
rule.
that.
Now, this is somewhat interesting because there was a rumor a few weeks ago, perhaps even a month ago, that infantry were going to get fight and extra rank special rule in an upcoming patch, per se, whatever you want to call it that. I'm wondering if that's actually been lost in translation and this is what's been talked about.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be a huge change for the game.
Yep.
Can I just clarify with, because fight and extra ranks gains you supporting attacks.
Yes, a supporting attack from each
It's
model.
one, right? It's one attack.
Correct. A supporting attack.
So Beastmen also have rules around being frenzied and all that. That doesn't stack with that, does it?
No, it does not.
You only get one supporting attack always. Strangle Root, magic missile, casting range casting value 9, range 4d6, which is again just a I-beam, right? D3 strength 3 AP2 hits. Probably a bit meh, but if you're comboing in a couple of dark magic, words of pains and other things, might be worthwhile.
So I think it's worth pointing out, sorry to jump in the middle of the explanation, that wording will be really interesting to see how it resolves, because if it is every model
that's massive,
right? That's almost a guaranteed kill against most of line infantry, getting D3, even at strength 3. But AP2, we've seen the power of things like Pillar of Fire. Interesting that a line spell is coming back. We haven't had a line spell so far. It will be
I think
interesting.
the orcs have one.
Do they?
I think the lizardmen have one as well.
Oh, okay. Well, forget me. Sorry.
D3, strength 3, AB2 on each model would be decimating to like a large blocky unit
that's very
of
true.
infantry.
But it also begs the question then, how many models can you hit? Is it like a cannon where if you're looking at a unit, can you only hit one model per rank, or can you do it diagonally so as to tag multiple models? It's interesting to sort of look at, and I'll be keen to
send
see
Chris
how
to look up the spell.
Yeah.
The orc spell.
I do think one thing to point out with these spells in particular is that you have to remember that Beastmen, as far as I know, the only mounts that they get are chariots. So we're used to thinking of some of these spells as being really good because we've got, Dark Pegasus sorceresses flying around. We've got some very crazy characters with very, very, very mobile mounts. Beastmen don't have that. So are you going to position your level 4 in such a way that this magic missile is going to go off consistently? It's kind of hard to judge. Might be a bit of a risk, but yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
The Woad Span. Large blast template, doesn't move and blocks line of sight. Enemy units within 6 inches of the template suffer -1 ballistic skill. Enemy units who end the movement within 3 inches must test for leadership. If they fail, they must flee. No for Bygo. That seems actually insane.
That does seem insane. That does everything.
It blocks line of sight. It does everything. It blocks line of sight. It makes you flee.
Gives you -1 BS.
Yeah. Gives you -1 BS. It seems... This is the only one where I stopped and went... Maybe let's take a bit of salt on this, because that could possibly be one of the best blocking spells in the game.
Especially in conjunction with the -1 leadership stuff.
Yep.
That could be fantastic.
So I would have to say, for me, obviously I set you guys up with a bit of a trap on the previous slide, asking you what your favorite spell was. This would have to be, if this is true, this would have to be my favorite spell by far.
So one more thing, just because it says Lore of Beasts at the top, there is a Lore of Beasts already. So Beastmen Grey Herds in the Ravening Hordes book have Lore of Beasts, and they've already got 3 spells. So
That's
I'm
just their
curious to
signatures
see.
though, no?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see, does this tack on to that? And so now they have
That's-
4 signatures? Or...
That's right. That's what I was asking
I
before.
think
Because
that's what Tom was asking,
what's the 5d6 spell that you can't take any armor saves against?
Viletide.
That's amazing.
Maybe this can be
Hag
Law
Tree
of the
Fetish.
Wild. Law of the Wild, then, or something like
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Something similar. Because if they lose access to something like that, then, that'd be pretty interesting. But I can't see that they would get rid of Lore of the Beasts in the Arcane Journal.
And in terms of the line spells, we do have, well, I found one so far, Gaze of Gork, which is a signature spell, and it's 5d6 in a straight line. And it's
Is it just any model hit?
any model hit suffers a strength 5 hit with an AP of -3.
So it's only a single hit in that instance. So, and these
So they might even do the D3 per model.
Yeah,
And
could
just
happen.
sort of
Yeah, well,
blow
this
through.
so Strangleroot is 2 less strength and 1 less AP, but I could see D3 hits being
I think that's what
applied.
Alistair was saying.
I think
Yeah,
that
it's
would
a
be
lot.
in line with Gaze of Gork.
Yeah, I would say
I
it's
feel
better.
like I'd rather the D3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
I
too.
probably would.
Because if you
Especially just decimating like little dark elf.
You toughness 4 people. All right. Okay.
All right.
So are we doing the same? We're picking out. I think maybe we all agree.
No, I think
Wordspan
yeah, I
feels-
think we can go. The
No, we've
whole-
already
the whole
chosen. We're not allowed
Oh,
to.
so-
do it
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, that's why. That's why. I
without the
totally
knowledge
That's why he did
of
it.
the next- All right,
Because he's
take
gonna
us
be right.
take us on to the next rumor, please, Alex.
Okay. So the herdstone,
Ugh.
right? And this
text.
is a lot of text, which kind of seems to me that it's good.
So before we start on that, because I didn't play any Beastmen in the old fantasy days, did they have the herdstone, or was that an AOS thing? Like I know the model in AOS does stuff. I don't know if they had it back in fantasy days.
I don't recall
think
an
so.
eighth ed herdstone model. I remember pieces of terrain that could be
Yeah, I
introduced
don't think so.
as herdstones, but they were in either the Beastmen book as like an alternative piece of random magical terrain, or as part of Ed Times even. But I do not recall an upgrade that you're able to buy.
Okay.
That would be a herdstone.
Okay, for our audio listeners, Alistair, why don't you take us away?
Fair enough. This appears to be a placeable upgrade, right? Much like, I suppose, the Wood Elf additional forest that you can do, except it is a paid upgrade for the army. The rumor, and I will stress that it is a rumor, suggests that it is a 100-point cost, which is not insignificant, as a cost, being forced to spend 5% of your total list cost on this. However, it may be deployed anywhere except the opponent's deployment zone or within 6 inches of the center of the board. It can be controlled by any unit that's not fleeing, that's unit strength 5 or more, that's within 6 inches of it. And if 2 units that qualify for this are within, it is contested with no control. However, onto the benefits, it grants magic resist 1 to the controlling unit. Reroll 1s to wound in combat for Beastmen. Beast Bray Shamans within 6 inches can add 1 to their casting rolls. Enemy wizards within 12 inches suffer a -1 penalty to cast. It is between 3 and 6 inches wide, which, if Wood Elf Forests have taught us anything, will mean that you will see lots of 6-inch circles being placed in any game where this would be included. And while within 12 inches of a herdstone, enemies suffer -1 leadership for fear, panic, and terror tests. It is a victory point scoring condition. So if either player controls it at the end of the battle, that player is awarded 200 additional victory points, which is very interesting as far as an inclusion goes, given it's a 100-point cost from your list for a potential 200-point return for your opponent, and is a special choice for Grand Army, Minotaur choice as core, and Primal Herds, which is allegedly the third Army of Infamy. It is a special choice. So interesting to be able to include a piece of terrain. Again, lots of special rules. I
And Alistair,
hesitate.
just quickly, just one
Yeah.
correction. the 200 victory points is also the Beastman player. Is the word?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Did I not point that out that it was
It's
both?
not just your
okay,
opponent.
so it is either player that controls it, right? The thing that makes me hesitate around this as an inclusion is just the sheer volume of rules that go along with it. Not only does it change game dynamics and game objectives by being able to place this thing down, but it has quite an absurd amount of additional special rules for 100 points.
And the
particularly
amount
if you are
of special rules that seem to be included here, though, indicate to me that it is real. So that's sort of
the detail is there. And
The
I will
detail is
say
there.
one comment perhaps people have missed. Like the rumor Discord, of course, like it's trash, it's all that. A 6-inch circle with 12 inches on either side is a 30-inch range.
So
it's nearly half the board.
To
yeah.
touch on that, so I actually owned an AOS Beastmen army, and I had the herdstone.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. Do you think any of them ever got any paint? No, but that's another story. It didn't have a base. It just sat on the table. Now, it was probably about 3 inches wide, and honestly, probably 6 inches deep, which is where I think that bit's come from. Because it's not on a base, there's little chains that come off out the front. So if it's not on a base, where are you measuring this stuff from?
Yeah.
Because that can get very spicy if it doesn't have an official designation.
Well, the Western Sydney Wargaming guys surely would just go, there's the rule,
What
which
was
is fantastic
the-
for our community.
Yeah, what was the ruling on the what was the
Casket of Souls.
no, the dwarf
Anvils
Anvil
on
of
a
Doom.
fit. The Casket of Souls and anvils. Because I asked, right? I asked about the anvil. My anvil was to put it on a 50 by 50. I, of course, wanted to go bigger because the model I had in mind was actually like a monolithic anvil. But, of course, I couldn't fit it on the 50 by 50.
It was for hobby. It was for hobby, I swear. It was for hobby. No, this is really interesting. I think, a 200 victory point bonus for the controlling player is fantastic, especially if all you want to do is put it in your deployment zone, because it doesn't stipulate that you can't put it in the enemy one. Put it in your deployment zone, put a tough unit in front and with a wizard, and then just all you need to do is benefit from +1 to casts. That's fantastic already, especially if it's a level 4, basically casting on a level 5. Then if something gets in close, they've also got the -1 penalty for their leadership, which is really, really strong. And then you're also getting rerolls to 1 if you're controlling it. It just seems very, very good for 100
for the
points.
purposes of Beastmen, I suppose it's quite an aggressive playstyle, right? Things like Vile Tide have quite a short range, so you want to ambushing. You want to be pushing up a lot. So I'd if it were as written, I'd expect to see it be played quite aggressively. But then it makes it really easy to develop not really easy. It makes it easier to develop a bit of a strategy around how you push down a board, being able to introduce a piece of terrain like this, because it really, apart from amplifying the potential danger of your units causing fear and terror, it also then, any of your sorcerers, any of your magic users are suddenly so much more powerful, so much more deadly against bigger creatures, the dragons that romp around in your back line, the big scary units with high armor saves that are capable of tearing through the cheaper Beastman stuff.
I'd like to say also from a lore perspective, because I do like the Beastmen lore quite a bit. It's the way it's written there, it is actually quite thematic. So when they deal with a herdstone in the lore, they do kind of get powered up when they're near it. They kind of go into a primal frenzy. Traditionally, they would sacrifice people at the herdstone to try and get the eye of the gods, chaos gods looking at them. So if those kind of rules are true, where it's if you're near the herdstone, you get these buffs, that is very thematic, I think.
So I really like being able to purchase a terrain that does something. I think that's really cool for a faction. It adds a lot of flavor to it, or flavor if you're from the Inner West.
It's also a $200 piece for GW, but yes.
That's right. But the one thing, or 3D printed from whoever have you.
From Alex's warehouse.
From Alex's warehouse. So the only thing, though, playing this aggressively, it could be incredibly easy to turn off, because it doesn't say that when 2 units are both contesting, it's the one with the highest unit strength to
has to be
control.
contested.
All you have to do is be within 6 inches and unit strength 5.
there's only one, or there's two controlling conditions, right? There's, if you control it, you gain magic resist 1, and that's anyone. If it's controlled by Beastmen, you can reroll 1s to win in combat. All the other effects don't require control.
Well, the 200 VP is very good.
except
What
for the
I'm saying is that it's very
200
easy
VPs,
for
right?
your opponent to turn it off if you place it too aggressively.
Potentially.
Yeah, but
That's
that's a
what
good
I
pickup, Alice.
more
Yeah,
mean.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, the -1 to cast is on at
that's
all
just
times.
That's just on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
so
interesting
there's-
because the Minotaurs, if you want
Yeah,
to
good
believe
pickup.
in those rumors, don't
And
have access to level 4.
Yeah. And I do want to
So-
believe because I love Minotaurs.
Oh, so do I. So do I. But I was
Except,
devastated
sorry,
that
I
they
do
don't
not
have
like.
skimballs.
I do not like those GW models. Any
There's
other Minotaur
Yeah,
is
plenty
so
of
much better.
plenty of 3D prints out there. All right, soft recommendation for Beast Slayer from the Go Trek and Felix series around herdstones. If you want to explore that, check that out. But let's move on.
Yeah, and by the way, check out James Wapple's oil painting, because I've gone down this rabbit hole, right? When I was doing my oil painting investigation, he's painted the most intensely brilliant oiled only Beastman herdstone, which I'm gonna find a photo of and make my new display photo in the next podcast. But yes,
James, if you listen, we expect that royalty
absolutely
kickback
not. He's
at some
absolutely
point
not
in the
But
future.
he's absolutely. Thank you to the listener that recommended his channel.
Let's carry on.
I think this
we've-
has got merit, as Tom says. A lot of detail here. I think we'll see it change it. But one final point, though, guys, is one final point. Just leave you with. How do we think this is going to interact with our local scene? Because we're now moving to mission-focused scenes, and as Tom was maybe alluding to, which is if you're awarding 200 victory points and you're on the scoring mission at, go and take the hill, let's say, and get an additional 3 battle points, what if you just put the herdstone on the hill? Suddenly your whole army rushes that hill and you get the 200 victory points plus 3 battle points, etc.
My easy solution would be that you probably just can't place it on top of
other terrain.
The objective.
within a particular amount of inches.
It does say not within 6 inches of the center, right? So if there's a hill in the center of the board, then you
It
can't.
was worth
can't do
noting that in AOS, and this was a problem in AOS, because some of these terrain pieces were obscenely big.
What is AOS, man?
Age of Sigma. But
What is that? What is that?
yeah, okay, very funny. The point that I'm trying to make is some of these faction terrain pieces. So the rule in AOS, it's changed a couple of times, but at one stage it was you couldn't place it within, I think, 3 inches of other terrain. But then they also went out and said, this is roughly how close all of your terrain should be on a map. And then when you looked at it, you're like, oh, I have
can't
like
physically
one
place it.
place that
Yeah.
I can put my terrain piece. So they have to be a bit careful.
I think the best thing to do would just be not on another piece of terrain,
Yeah,
like a hill.
agreed.
Because then, but also fantasy or the old world tables are fairly sparse inherently.
I
So
think-
it should be fine.
I think it'll behave much like the Wood Elf Forest. It'll just be bring BYO 6-inch steering wheel, place it wherever you want, or 6-inch straight line so it acts like a barrier. I think we'll see creative users,
like
but
that.
until someone brings something that makes everyone uncomfortable, we're not gonna see the repercussions. Frankly,
John's going to put it on a 6-inch base. I'm telling you right now. He's going to say circles only. None of this 6-inch line. And it's like a wall.
it'll be
It's like a stone wall.
6-inch flying V. That's what it'll be. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right.
Come on.
All right, Chris.
Yes. So we've seen in recent weeks a lot of different comp packs come out. And I'd say the talking point would be around the level of comp and kind of what comp is good. So I don't think it's any surprise that we quite like the our local comp, which is the Blacktown stuff. So that's SummerSlam, Autumn Assault, Winter Warfare.
Run by the Western Sydney Wargamers.
Yeah, it's a very, very good tournament. Highly recommend you check it out. But there have been some other big events recently in our city. So we've had Clash and we've had ShireCon. And I've also seen some other events around the world that have been playing around with comp. I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on the level of comp that you think is required to play the game? Whether you need no comp at all, or are you happy just playing with your like local comp metas? Would you prefer to see like a more wide-ranging adoption of a particular comp, and then we just all kind of settle and run through that?
I think we should start with a quick history, which is when we started tournaments in Sydney. It was 1,500 points, no comp, effectively. Next tournament was same thing again, 1,500 points, no comp. January, we saw the introduction of Throne of Skulls, still at 1,500 points. Then Throne of Skulls, 2,000 points. And we're moving into a different comp, as you've said. But generally, I think that the vibe has been, everyone's been pro-comp, because when we were back at the start, it was like, wow, we're a bunch of strangers in the room, the game's back, holy shit, we love this all day. Then
Whoa.
Alistair brought a dragon.
Yeah,
Right.
and ruined everything.
And
Started the arms race.
the innocence was shattered. So we're now in this position where, and I'll speak personally, right? Which is, I might get to an event once every few months and taking time out from the kids and putting that mental load onto my wife, etc. I don't want to turn up and have a shit day. So
The S-bombs are just getting dropped left, right, and center.
I know. Well, we ticked the expletives thing. Well, I mean,
Okay, that's cool.
on there. But the point being that I feel like most people are in the same boat where they're saying, I want to feel like I want to go to an event. And the days of 10 years ago, which was just bring you're a killer, like just absolutely killer, and you're gonna play a gotcha, and you're gonna find some margin to catch some guy out of because to get the points are totally gone. There's a few probably remnants of that laying about. It's still a tournament. Even I debate that now. I think it's really more like a games day that we're going to these days at the Western Sydney Wargamers, but with the upside of it being a fantastic day for people to go and have 3 solid games. So that's the preface leading into the totally lead the witness.
I'm only smirking a little bit at some of the things that you're saying, Alex. But I agree generally, and I suppose our experience collectively, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, we will correct you.
That I have no doubt. But our experience has generally been that, yeah, we want to go and enjoy our experience. It is a big investment from all of us. That said, and I'm probably a little bit more cynical than you around the remnants of the old cultures that existed back when we were all younger men playing tournaments and attending nationals comps and running our own tournaments as well, because we did
We've
do
got some
that.
photos real quick of us as younger men, and on the next episode we should show them because
We should not
they're
show them.
hilarious.
And then
They are fantastic.
compare them with the most flattering pictures we can find of ourselves these days.
Recreate those exact situations.
30 kilograms later.
Same
But,
shirts as well.
Yeah. It's still in the wardrobe, but it might look slightly more like a tank top. But a crop top, excuse me. But I suppose the point I'm driving to is that comp feels like a nicer way, a more effective way of ensuring that the general experience when it comes to tournament scenes, when it comes to environments, is a more pleasant one. And it boils down, I think, in my mind, maybe to a discussion around, well, what is comp for? And who is comp for? Because Clash, as we've sort of talked about a little bit before we started the stream, having no comp, there are some really uncomfortable things that popped up in terms of list composition. at that tournament, and they are reflective of things that are seen globally, talked about in Discord forums, seen at tournaments that have had no comp to this point, seen in the online environments, the Warhol tournament scene as well. And I don't think any of us, on our best day, on our happiest, most carefree day, would care to step within a room that had even one of those uncomfortable lists. So
I do want to say really quick before we continue that I don't think the unfortunate reality is the game allows those
100%.
constructions. So the fault shouldn't lie with the players here.
Not at
The
all.
players are entitled to do whatever they'd like. They're also paying customers. But other than that, I agree with your sentiment. Hence, I also agree with your ideas on comp. But yeah, continue. I just think that highlight players want to play with their models and they want to win.
I think,
Absolutely.
I think my approach to this is, I guess the question, why does comp even exist? And some players, particularly the really good players, might be sitting there going, why am I being restricted? Why am I being limited? And it's not necessarily to try and balance the game. It's to balance the experience. So what we're trying to do is to go, hey, top tier players, you're really, really good at this game. You're probably going to win most of your games anyway. We're going to put some guardrails in to try and make the games just a little bit more competitive between everyone involved, to try and rein in some of those top end players a little bit, right? They still get to do their list building and highly competitive play, but those guardrails hopefully prevent things like 20-0 blowouts, and someone turning up to an event who doesn't really understand the meta, so to speak, and rolling out an army that just isn't going to be competitive and then getting absolutely flogged every single game. That's kind of the core thing here. And I think one of the problems with Old World compared to other game systems is they didn't really build any guardrails in at all, I would say. Like, to be perfectly frank, list building as it's currently written in the rulebook,
pretty crazy.
There's really no restrictions at all, I would say.
It is totally the Wild West.
Yeah, and you look at other game systems like X-Wings and games like that, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Shatterpoint. They're kind of really tightly balanced around a certain structure of how things are run and played, and those game designers are very engaged in making sure that those guardrails are there to keep things in shape.
X-Wing game designers are engaged, are they?
They were engaged. They were engaged.
Of the past, Tom.
Don't
Perhaps,
hold me back.
Perhaps,
Hold me back.
perhaps
Isn't it
used to
dying
be.
for a second time? Did I hear that? Oh, the heartbreak.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's, I suppose, poignant for us to talk to Winter Warfare and what's happening in June. But I think that particular example of why comp exists and our justification, perhaps extending to the sentiments of the Western Sydney Wargamers guys. What we've seen in the growth of this particular tournament, we've all we've been there since the beginning of these tournaments, and what we've seen is a community come together really quite quickly, and not only come together and form quite a friendly community. Lots of people know each other now. Lots of people would be able to greet each other by face and by name, but we're also seeing lots of people come from environments where they've never played in a competitive scene before. They've never stepped into that room and gone, oh my God, like I have to play 3 games over the course of today in an environment where I'm expected to win. Paddy Brown is a great example, but there's others. Steve, in his very first introduction in Western City Wargamers, never played a game, or hadn't played a game in 2 decades, and never really played a game at all for the Old World before he stepped in, bringing a Sun Dragon to the very first tournament. Like it's a bold thing to ask people, particularly people who have been so invested in the Warhammer Fantasy series of editions prior to the end of that particular game, to step out of their shells and step into a tournament scene. And it's one of those things that can get lost so easily in the considerations of who's the best and what's the meta is how and why are you doing things to be able to introduce this in a friendly way to people who have never been to those events, thus to sustain your own growth. Because to step into this and go, we're going to let people run as hard and as fast as they can, that's fine. Maybe that's totally representative of what the game should be. You know, the designers have put it together in a particular way. Maybe you should be free just to do whatever the heck you want within the bounds of the written game. But at the same time, the community, I feel, is a massive aspect of this game. And in order to sustain that community, you can't go to every tournament and go, 10% of these players are going to bring lists that will cream probably 80% of the remaining people, and then have sort of semi-uncomfortable games with the other percentage that remains. But these 10% will always prevail every time because of list composition and because of skill. But to be able to introduce comp, at least on the list composition side of things, it does help balance the scales a little bit. It does shape experience quite a bit. And going back, I suppose, to my original point around Winter Warfare, what we've seen this time is a departure from Throne of Skulls, as it stands and has been utilized in the community, and actually now a hard 25% limit on characters, period. So I think the big ones are rule of 3. So you cannot now take any unit more than 3 times, or under the unit restrictions as declared by your army book or otherwise, whichever is lower. And then 25% hard cap on characters, which means in a 2,000-point tournament, no more than 500 points may be spent on characters. There are no other limitations, however. You can take multiple level 4s within that 25%. You can take whatever value up to that 500 points. But characters are back to those old days of 8th edition and before. Characters are now limited to 25% of your total unit composition. And it will change things. It's already changed the way that we're talking about it. And it will hopefully change things in a slightly more interesting and maybe more friendly way.
Yeah, I think that the buy effect is, of course, armies are going to benefit in different ways, and some are going to be negatively impacted, although this brings in other considerations like the Renegade pack, and there's a running commentary, and I'm big on this, which is, we should be pro the Renegade pack because Lizardman players, Demons players shouldn't have to turn up to an event and just automatically get curb stomped, right? And like, you should be able to. I don't understand this commentary about it.
Come on, mate.
Don't worry about Ogres, mate.
You don't have to take bulls anymore, Tom. You're fine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But the point being that I think this has been an ongoing conversation for God knows, like 20 years. Comp in Warhammer
Since
fantasy,
time immemorial. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're big on the absolute full hyperbolic conversation, go listen to Lord Blacksill and his thoughts on comp, and you'll get it straight from the horse's mouth. But the point here as well is that the 2+ guys did a video on this. The question down the bottom: can it remain a vibe, or do we need comp? And again, Alex and Paddy went through this. Chris, one thing you didn't mention was at Clash they actually had 5 or 6 players drop.
Yes. So there's a group of players that I know in the Sydney area who are kind of on the cusp of diving into these kind of events. They had, I want to say it was 6 of them signed up for Clash. A couple of them had to pull out for other reasons before the event, but it was about 4 of them when the lists were revealed. All 4 dropped because they saw, I guess, exactly what Alistair was talking about earlier, whereas they just saw it and went, I'm going to go to a 2-day event and I'm going to get absolutely smashed every single game. I basically have no chance because of how I've built my list versus how other people have built their lists. And it's just the vibe check did not pass at all. And that all of them, because I spoke to them afterwards, all of them just said, look, I'd rather do something else with my weekend than run into that.
And I
know a lot of people would say, sorry, Alistair, I know a lot of people would say that that's a bit of like a bad sport approach to take, but I actually think that that's so valid, and it also sends a really good message to event organizers. Like, you guys have alluded to the fact that I'm alone and single and sad quite a few times. So I've got no other responsibilities. But you've also alluded to the fact that I'm a uni student in some previous episodes. So yeah, like from an affordability perspective, I don't think I really want to rock up and pay 50 or 60 or $80 for an event when I could be studying or I could be hanging out socially with my family or, you know, just doing something else. It's just
Could be working.
I could be
working.
making more money. Exactly. Yeah, I don't think, and I think the vocal majority, sorry, the vocal minority will get up in arms about comp. But you know, the quiet Australians, as touted by the omnipotent Peter Dutton, is probably correct in that, you know, comp is a very good
I think
sort of.
I think it's also worth noting, and I don't want to attack the TO. I don't want to attack the tournament itself, but I don't really want to defend the guys that pulled out either, because, you know, read of that what you will. But there in the players pack, there was a specific ruling which basically said if your list more or less doesn't pass the vibe check, we will ask you to resubmit. I would argue, and so would those players who pulled out, that there were several lists that ended up going through that absolutely did not pass the vibe check, but they were never asked to resubmit. In fact, as far as I know, no lists were asked to resubmit. So it's kind of a feels bad if you put in your players pack, hey, we've got this soft comp, because that is definitely soft comp. It doesn't actually specify what a feels bad list is. It just says, hey, if the TO kind of feels that it doesn't pass the vibe check, it's not going to go through. If you're going to go with that and then not enforce that, the players that are going in expecting that, and then it doesn't materialize.
I suppose it speaks to the subjectivity of comp, and we've sort of talked about again who is comp for, and in previous videos we've talked about how subjective comp can be because XTO has had Y experience, and thus they will introduce Z comp rules to specifically nullify that experience from happening again.
Very personable, subjective approach.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think the broader applications, or maybe applications that try and change what is more commonly seen at quote unquote meta, are more interesting for that. And so Winter Warfare, for example, with this limitation on characters, what is a really common theme among Warhammer community victories that we see, and I'm sure everyone listening has looked at tournament lists or seen outcomes of who won what. It is very common to see armies with 1,000 points of characters just end up in top 5 positions and be the majority in top 5 positions in tournament outcomes. Does that mean that every game includes them? No, it doesn't. Does that mean that friendly players structure their armies that way? I'd say friendly in terms of you're a once a month player, or more frequently if you have the time. But does it mean that every single game is going to be structured like that? No. But I suppose going back to our reasoning around what this is for and why it's important for us and why we feel it's important for our community, it is to try and round those sharp edges to ensure that experiences are more consistent for a lot of people. And Chris makes a really valid point. Skilled players will likely rise to the top as a result of their skill, and they'll still turn up.
They'll still turn up.
We're seeing that more and more in the Blacktown group, right? You've got more players who are willing to travel for longer to come to this, well publicized and highly spoken of event. Now it's talked about in half a dozen podcasts, so including our own. So yeah, I agree with the sentiment. I don't think the game itself can pass the vibe check anymore. I think there are people who will play it how it is written. And as Tom points out, it's no one's fault that it's written that way and people are entitled to play it. We've talked about how Warhammer can be played and the various types of approaches you can take with both list building and play, and how that's written into the rules. But
I think the best and safest thing to do from all event organizers, should they be so inclined, is to easily just do the official Games Workshop Throne of Skulls comp.
Yep.
I think that I hand over heart would not go to an event that doesn't run at least Throne of Skulls comp. And I think it's just a fantastic example of taking away the subjectivity because you inherently just say, okay, well, this is the official form. This is the official
comp.
line. So let's just go for it. I do think, being a massive proponent of comp, I do think that comp can go too far. And I do think that it will be interesting to see how Winter Warfare pans out. Potentially that's an overstretch because some factions won't really be able to flourish and function, as we might talk about later on in this episode. But I think Throne of Skulls is just such a clean way of doing things. Yes, I think Creaky Gamers Keith won the most recent Western Sydney Wargamers tournament under Throne of Skulls comp, which did have quite a few Behemoths and 1,000 points of characters and all that kind of stuff. So, at that point, maybe a little bit more needs to be done. Again, no slight on Keith. He's a fantastic player and he took exactly what he needed to. But already at those events, we started seeing a lot more variation, a lot more sort of innovation in list building. So I think, I'm always take a incremental approach to things. Don't overreach because then you probably get a backlash from the players. But if you just say, hey, let's tack on Throne of Skulls and adjust accordingly within the own bounds of our community, I don't really think you can go wrong. But I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think Old World can pass the vibe check.
So you're advocating baseline to Throne of Skulls.
Baseline Throne of Skulls.
Absolutely any event that we go to. Which
I
would
won't go
agree
to one without a Throne of Skulls comp.
And just to finish off on this page, as Elsa, you alluded to, and Tom, I think you said this as well, Western Sydney Wargamers, I think now we can say is the litmus test of any comp, any pack, anything we want to do. Because, we're talking about Clash, we're talking about ShyCon. Yes, they got 25. Forgive me if you were at 10, I wasn't at 35, whatever. Western Sydney Wargamers is already 40. Probably easily 50 if the boys wanted to expand out a bit more.
Not that Alex is driving you in that particular direction.
I'm driving to that.
ShyCon it's hard to judge. It was about 25 players.
Sure. But the point being is that this is a regular event series where they can test out comp, they can test out these ideas and roll it back. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we did a couple of few in Throne of Skulls, didn't like that, go back. Same with the Renegade pack, if it's really bad, if it's not. But I would suggest this might even be the biggest event that the Renegade pack is running. Because even Rob at the TSN Arena has only got max 24 players or something like that. He's run a few events with the Renegade pack. This is going to 40. Okay, we've got 25% limit. But the point being is that we can collect this data and is a testament to, again, I would say, focusing on the quiet Australians, Tom, not the few. Are you saying that us compers are the Labor Party or the Liberal Party in this?
Let's move on.
Let's move on. We've just had an election. We don't need anymore.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Tom.
Subliminal messaging doubles.
Tom, go on. Take us away.
All right. So this is, let's move on to our Western Sydney Wargamers Winter Warfare discussion here, which is probably the event that most of us are going to next. It will definitely be my next event. So one good thing that we always say about the Western Sydney Wargamers is their missions are always fantastic. They're always so much fun. The innovation that comes through and the ways that they force you to change your army lists and your army rosters via missions are really, really cool. So one of the things that Alex and I have been testing a little bit online has been this second game, or the second mission, which is basically forcing you to take standard. So for the audio listeners, the mission is Battlefield Superiority. Play with the most battle standard bearers wholly within a table quarter controls that table quarter. A musician breaks ties, and then unit strength breaks ties. Fleeing units don't count. If you control one or more zones, you get 1 battle point. So 1 per battle point, potentially. 1 battle point per quarter, potentially. And if you control more battle quarters than your opponent, then you'll get an additional 3. So you can get quite a few bonuses to your battle points. And keep in mind that this is not your victory points. This is your battle points. So, the Western Sydney Wargamers cap you out at 16. in terms of the winning battle points that you can actually score from killing your opponent's army, but then you could spike up technically to 23 here. So massive swings based on the amount of banners that you're going to be bringing in your army. Alex, you have done some crazy calculations based off the 2+ boys. So talk us through them.
I don't want to steal their credit. I also don't want to steal their credit to Paddy and Alex when they were discussing this. But after clarifying with the TOs that yes, it's not 1 or 3, it's 1 plus 3. You can score 4. And Tom, I think it's max 20.
Yeah, max 20.
Does it say that down there?
16. If you absolutely table 16.
Oh, sorry, 1 or
4.
more zones. My bad. I thought it was one per zone.
Yeah. So
Hence
total 4. And Alex Brown point at the south that every battle point is effectively get I think net about 250 kill points.
Yep.
So 4 battle points playing the mission is net 1,000 points kill difference. That's massive.
Significant. Yeah. And the way that they've calculated that is based on the VP difference. So 0 to 249 gets you 10, 250 to 499, i.e. a 249 point increase is 1 battle point. So that's where the 2+ guys have gotten this data from, essentially, or this calculation, the formula, if you will. So how has that impacted your list building, Alex?
Well,
you've changed faction.
I've changed faction. Well, I wish I hadn't in some ways, but I changed faction before. But the last bit we discussed this in the last video about it's not just the standards now. You're scoring of doing 50% or more wounds to a unit, monster, whatever, etc. My gut feel is the games are gonna be so tight in terms of victory points that it's going to come down to the standards, which means it's quite probably a genius Mensa level mission design by John Michael and the team. Clearly been tested a lot on bringing this out, but I do feel that you have to go for both. Perhaps even scoring is above kill, and why I've called it the great debate: are we killing or scoring? Because if you're just going to try and table people and not bring enough scoring units,
I think it's just to touch on that point. I think it's worth noting that, we talked about Western Sydney Warriors capping you at 16 and then adding these on top. So if you were kind of aiming for 16 points, which is that's a good win, right? 20 is huge, but 16 is kind of where you want to aim usually. You only have to kill 501 points, and then score these 4 bonus points, and then you're up at 16. And as I just said, that's a good score.
if you've got a differential,
Yeah. So I think it's a very elegant way of trying to push people to play the missions a bit more and a bit better.
Definitely.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, and Warhammer can sometimes, if without these custom missions, really does devolve into I'm just going to beat the living crap out of you and try and not lose anything in return. Certain armies will play avoidance, and then they're playing the differential game a little bit. But by encouraging these battle points and the way that they do them, it encourages units to move around the board and not necessarily just smack other units in the face, which is good.
Yep. Now, to Tom's point about other units to look at, put the scoring aside for a second. Just look at that 50%. When you look at demons, typical choice, if you want to call it competitive, even though they're still the lowest performing faction. Thank you very much, everybody. The data, thank you, Gomo, is on World Rankings. You can check it out yourselves, boys. Is that you would go double Demon Prince, Tzeentch, Blaster Mage, basically rolling around. Now, you can't really do that in this format because all you have to do is 2 wounds to your Demon Prince and they're scoring points. So you think, okay, I want to go Greater Demon, and we can spend an hour on the next episode discussing the Greater Demons in great detail. But I'm leaning to the Nurgle side because of the fact that the Fat Boy is super tough. So not being able to give away half his points from a single one of Alice's bolt throws hitting it is ideal. He's accusing me of tailoring.
No tailoring here at all. No.
Just happens that your stuff now hits
Oh,
and wounds
yeah.
on 6s.
Yeah. And multiple small units to avoid the frenzy. Yeah. No, it's
get
He
fine.
also,
We'll get there.
the Greater Demon of Nurgle, he does D3 multi-wounds,
We'll get to
right?
that, Tom. We'll get to that.
Right,
We'll get to that.
That somehow
Tom.
works
We're
against
talking
my-
defensively only here.
Sure, yeah, of
Defensively
course,
only,
yeah.
right?
This is victory points only,
He's
yep.
toughness 7. He's a 5-up ward. He's 5-up regen. That means that he can literally take on a dragon, and the dragon is hitting him. I'm sorry, talking the dragon itself, which is typically most of the damage. Let's be real. In most of the builds, is hitting him on 4s, re-rolling 6s from Mark and Nogel, wounding him on 5s, and then he gets his
4s.
5.
Most high-level dragons are strength 7.
Strength 7. Okay, 4s. Thank you. 4s, and he's got 5-up ward and 5-up regen, and he's got 7 wounds. So that extra wound, right? Maybe I need to get ChatGPT to run some
Just
intense
introducing
mathematics.
the grain of fear back into Alex's
right,
life.
right. He'll as I've said, Dave. My visions of Dave's Bretonias in my grudge match round 1 are already coming to me at night, and it's 4 6s on the Monster Slayer roll.
Oh, it's the worst.
That's all right.
rule.
Knowing
First
you'll get
world.
3 5-up. Oh no, you need all 4 5-up.
No,
because
well,
no regents.
I've got 4
No regents.
dice in the microwave, very specifically ready for that. When I pull them out of my pocket, I can put them back in there. But yes, to Tom's point, again, when we first, and maybe we'll look at your list, Tom, and then go over some of the practice games we did. It's a different vibe entirely, because you're thinking about the scoring. My game plan is basically get the Greater Demon just bashing around in the middle of the field to stop you from coming back. And I have gone and thought probably 7 Plague Bearers are actually a pretty solid unit. And pro tip, don't put champions in your small scoring units, because the standard bearer dies before the champion does. So you want that standard bearer to be the last
man
remaining
standing.
wound at all points.
Yeah.
But especially if you play an unbreakable faction like I do.
How convenient.
I think what we should do, just real quick, is next episode we should break down the Western Sydney Wargaming pack for Winter Warfare, because there are some really cool missions, and because it's the 25% cap, moving away from Throne of Skulls, it'd be really good to see how we design and what we're thinking.
Yeah, I do love, because they've done something similar to this in the last one. I do like seeing how it changed lists. So, when was the last time? First of all, when was the last time any of us took a banner that wasn't just a magic banner? Outside of this.
Last event, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Righto.
Which
Right.
I had 5
stipulated scoring
Marauders with
4
a banner
banners.
last
Yeah,
event.
Yeah, so like
Exactly.
most people just weren't taking the banners because they just don't really do anything. But the other thing is, how many units did you see where it's like, oh, there's just a little group of I don't know, Empire men at arms, right, or whatever.
yeah, like Wood Elf little
Yeah.
skirmishes or something with a banner.
Obviously, they don't really want to get into fights, but they want to sit in a corner because they want you to score either 1 or 3 victory points from that. And it was just refreshing to see the list change in ways to accommodate these kind of missions. Because I think the best example of a list that would struggle in this kind of mission is that Empire
Dwarf
Gunline.
list.
Well, the dwarf list. But I don't know if anyone saw the Empire Gunline
The
from
Nuln list. Yeah.
Clash. Yeah, it was effectively 100% guns, and it just sits on the backboard and it goes, "We're playing the differential game, and I'm just going to blast you away before you get to me." Well, guess what? If I'm hiding behind that house in that map on the left, or I'm hiding behind that hill, you can't see me. I've got a banner. I've now got 2 quarters. You don't have any because that gun line didn't have any banners in it.
And I'm scoring 4.
Guess you what? I'm effectively up 1,000 points already. Yeah.
Big proponent of it. And so, yes, I've gone through probably 4 iterations, which has now meant I've gone to MSU Demons, everyone's favorite playstyle. Can't get criticized. I have moral
40K flashbacks.
superiority. I'm claiming it now.
Are you going for best in faction of the 2 of the worst factions
Yes.
in the game? Yeah.
Yes, Chris.
Got to
Just
collect them
checking.
all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do got to catch
So
them all. All right.
Let's go to the Winter Warfare sort of format, and this, the underlying theme, the underlying current of this episode, I guess, has been comp versus no comp. Throne of Skulls, as I've said, personally, is sort of where I like to start. I think for an Ogre player, that gives me a lot of options to actually adequately combat what's out there. I went 2-1 at the last event, which I really enjoyed. I had a Tyrant, a BSB, and a Slaughtermaster all in one unit, protected by regen. I had dragon protection, I had magic protection, I had regen, I had sort of points protection because all of my points were in that one unit. It was very fun. I really enjoyed it. I don't think that it really presented any horrible sort of scenarios or playstyles for my opponent. I didn't play against the Tomb Kings. I did play against the Vampire Counts, which just absolutely tanked me. But, it was, I think at that points level, 2,000, and with Throne of Skulls, I think that the Ogres have a lot of, options to do things, and I think that they're quite a good faction. But Winter Warfare, has comp gone too far from the Ogres' perspective? So 2,000 points, which is standard, and that's fantastic. I think Ogres really want to be there. We've got a pretty standard unit selection, 0 to 3, which is nice. It means that you can't get those things that we were just talking about with the 10,000 cannons that they've been bringing in Empire. And Corkin, of course, have up to 6. But we've gone back to 8th edition levels, which is pre-end times, to a total character limit of 25%. Now, controversial. I think on paper, that's unbelievable. Is it better than Throne of Skulls 25%? I think in some scenarios, absolutely, right? Because you're limiting yourself to one big thing if you're going to go down the big thing route. So for High Elves examples, you're just going to be bringing a prince on a dragon with no magic. Or you're going to be bringing a slightly more fragile dragon with a mage on top that's level 4 that can sort of hybrid into both. But then you don't have a BSB and you don't have some other things. So it's fairly interesting. Ogres, though, it's crazy. So we'll jump over to what I've been trying to think. And now keep in mind, a lot of these attempts and iterations of list building have been done with the missions in mind. So we can flesh this out in another episode.
And a few test games.
And a few playtest games, which we can run through as well.
Also, to point out, Renegades in play here.
Yes, Renegades are in play.
Which is why
Absolutely.
lead belchers are on the screen and not,
That's
in the bin.
Not in the bin. So basically the first mission, which isn't shown on the screen, of course, is basically capture the tower. So that's where we as a group started thinking that man-eaters actually might be pretty good. We can get into the nitty-gritty of that maybe next episode. But essentially, because of the way that combat works in towers and vanguarding man-eaters and putting them in a tower, you're locked to 10 models attacking me, I think, and then I can get my full swing of attacks into you.
I think the actual
Ogres.
ruling is it's like up to unit strength 10 can
10
enter
with
it,
5
but
models.
only 5 models ever fight.
There you
In
go,
the
5.
fighting rank.
So that's
Yeah.
that's
So
even
it's
better.
monstrous
it's
infantry.
three man-eaters versus 5 Empire Halberdiers.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's why the man-eaters are there. The lead belchers are there, as we said, because it is Renegades. And then I'm trying to bring the banner on the Iron Guts, the banner on the man-eaters, the banner on the Mournfang for the rest of the missions, which are banner control. But basically, we've got 2 characters. We've got a Slaughtermaster that's level 4, Law Familiar, Spell Eater Axe, and Death Cheater. He's going to be my general. He's running battle magic for basically Oaken Shield as a standard, and then he can flit between a few other spells. Curse of Arrow Attraction is kind of cool because I've got the Lead Belchers and the Man-Eaters now. I've got Fireball, which is a staple, which is really fantastic with the Ruby Ring of Ruin on the Man-Eaters. So there's some flexibility there. And then we've also got the Bruiser, Great Weapon, Heavy Armor, Battle Standard Bearer with the Cannibal Totem. He's obviously going to be going into the Iron Guts to give them more regen. But you don't have the Tyrant, so you don't have the big oomph protection, which Alex and I have found very detrimental. Some call it tailoring, some call it luck, some call it good tactics.
Definitely not tailoring.
But all you need to do is shove a big old Greater Demon and Nurgle into that unit. I can't do anything about it because I don't have a Tyrant.
Well, we should preface, Tom. We played Greater Demon and Nurgle twice, and Keeper's Secrets once.
And Khorne once.
But in the games where specifically the Greater Demon has made it into the block, I now know, and I said this to you in our last game, in this list that you have, my only job is to get Fatty or the Keeper Secrets, whatever grey demon it is, into your Ogre block,
That's right.
and I'm there because the challenge against your monstrous infantry is so devastating for the fact that it's your 3 wounds off your champion into the 5 overkill plus my close order. I'm at 9 plus 9
right.
pretty much the whole time.
And I would be happy throwing my Tyrant against that because
100%.
he's got the Tenderizer. He's got Death Eater himself. He's got Armor of Meteoric Iron. So he's always got a 5-up, 5-up, 5-up.
Now, Tom.
Yep.
Though, some might say
Here we go.
you could run the Tyrant.
I could run the Tyrant.
At what cost is your soul willing to give up?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was
Exactly.
actually going to ask that. So, do you find the BSB is mandatory?
Well, you can't run with the Winter Warfare points limit. You cannot run both a Slaughtermaster and a Tyrant at under 500 points.
Yeah,
So that's not an option.
sure.
I
I was just curious. I guess the line that I'm trying to get to is for factions that are a bit cheaper than ogres, but are still quite elite. Do you go the BSB as that second hero for the various BSB benefits that you get, or maybe do you lean into like more of a killy, punchy character? Because I mean, the Bruiser. I mean, you don't have to technically make it a BSB. You can just make it a
You could
punchy
bring a
character.
Bruiser.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they're just not. So the ogres inherently have low leadership.
they do.
You'll see on the right hand side of the screen here with the Mournfang, the Lead Belchers, and the Iron Blaster. They're all leadership 7, right?
Yep.
So only the Man Eater's leadership 8. That's a 50-50 chance of failing on average.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm using the Slaughtermaster's General's leadership, but as soon as they deviate out of that range, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
But if they can get the BSB range, then we're probably good to go. What you could do, and I'd love to hear what the audience thinks of this, you could drop the Slaughtermaster, bank on the Rune Maw in the Iron Guts, and just say, I'm not going to play this Magic game. I've got a 66% chance of you never being able to cast a spell at this unit, and I've got the Slaughtermaster. Sorry, I've got the Tyrant there, and let's play. That is a viable option.
I'm super curious to see, and maybe we can get stats on this after Winter Warfare. How many people are going to take the one punchy, like melee monster character, probably on a dragon, and how many people are going to go, nah, I absolutely must have my magic, so I'm going to go with a level 4 that's all tooled up.
It'll be really cool to see, for sure.
Or Chris, have both in a single model.
That's right. Like a
Greater Demon.
Greater Demon. Yeah.
And we've lucked. Demons have probably lucked out on that. In it's been a swing towards they can bring a level 4
which
and
is
a
cool.
combat monster, which is cool.
Very cool.
In that niche set, that's great actually for them. Tom, the consideration I was thinking was a spell leader acts as your magic resist 2, right?
That's right.
Can you put it on the Bruiser? And as you're saying, then you've still got magic resist 2. And the Rune Maw. Oh, the Rune Maw's on the unit anyway. And then you've got
Absolutely.
That's pretty.
You put the Spell Eater Axe on the Bruiser.
Yep.
And then you take a Tyrant with his standard sort of loadout.
Yeah.
You've still got 5-up regen on the unit. You lose the Oaken Shield on the unit, but at the same time, like they've got the 5-up anyway. I failed it
in our game, last game, a couple of times.
And the Tyrant is such a challenge machine. He's weapon skill 6. He's got 6 attacks. He does D3 wounds a pop. He's got Death Eater, so you have to reroll. It's really good. I'll go through the rest of the list. It's 9 Iron Guts with Terror on the champ, Rune Maw for spell protection, and
which is
Bellower.
the 3 on a 3-up. You have to redirect the spell.
Have to redirect the spell. Of course, it doesn't work against indirect things like a template being placed or whatever have you, but it's still a fantastic item. I've actually found it a little bit more useful than the War Banner in a lot of scenarios, just because it always works basically, or I always get the chance to roll
I think
for
it's
it.
better
whereas
than
the War Banner,
dispelling. I think it has a higher
100%.
chance to dispel. Yeah.
3 units of Vanguarding Saber Tusks, which are fantastic at providing my units cover, and just redirecting some charges etc. 3 man-eaters, they take poisoned attacks and Vanguard. And then I really abuse the Motley Crew rule here. I take 1 with light armor, I take 2 with heavy armor, and I take 1 of the ones with heavy armor also takes an Iron Fist. So I've got a 6-up, a 5-up, and a 4-up armor save. And I can basically, using the Motley Crew roll, always roll against the best armor save, but take the weakest off in terms of wounds. So it's quite strong. I've got 3 braces of Ogre pistols, so they're running around with Vanguard and poison attacks, just trying to snipe some last little wounds off. And then I've got a captain with the Ruby Ring of Ruin. So they put a lot of firepower out. They're predominantly designed to take the tower in mission number 1, which we can go through next time. But then they can also play the sort of table quarter game and put a lot of pressure on a flank if I need to with Vanguard and poison attacks. It's also worth noting that with the double pistols in combat, they have 5 attacks each. The captain has 6 and they're all strength 5. So they're quite strong.
Does the brace of Ogre pistols, how does that interact with the Iron Fist when you're in combat?
It doesn't interact in combat.
Okay,
so you can't
pick one or the other.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you just basically take the Iron Fists in combat instead of the Ogre pistols.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't use both. 4 man-eater cavalry, Mournfang cavalry with great weapons, heavy armor, Crusher, Standard Bearer with the Bull Standard, so they can reroll the impact hits. Still not sold, but it's more me being really bad at playing cavalry than Mournfang, I'm sure. But I've just found that they're so fragile for the amount of points. But when they get the charge, fantastic. And then 2 units of 2 lead belchers with a Thunder Fist and a Bellower each. Now, they're pretty good. The Renegades pack has given them a significant glow up, which I really appreciate. They can't take banners, which I would absolutely love. And I think that would propel the unit into, at least in our community, in the Western Sydney Wargaming sort of standard bearer meta, that would be fantastic. But I get it. You can't hold a banner and a cannon and shoot it at the same time.
You can have it on his back, Tom.
I guess so.
Back.
Yeah, you could strap it. And then an Iron Blaster. Usually I play with 2 Iron Blasters. But I really want to try out 2 units of 2 lead belchers for basically the same points as 1 Iron Blaster. Because they can go between trying to take out chaff or solid shotting monsters.
Yeah,
I think
we should point out before you just go, Alistair, is that the lead belchers actually did perform well. That they did a lot of wounds on my Soul Grinder in multiple games. So absolutely, the new rules do not underestimate.
The Renegades pack real quick as no multi-shot penalties and no move and shoot penalties. So now they're basically what they were in 8th. And with Curse of Arrow Attraction, they're pretty good.
Yeah, there's less of an onus, I suppose, just overall on preparing for the worst of the flying behemoth meta, right? So this is, I suppose, the direct comparison between Throne of Skulls and this particular comp and how you prepare. Granted that you want to try lead belchers for the sake of it, you have renegades now, and it's going to be interesting to reintroduce them. How comfortable would you be in an environment where you'd still be potentially facing flying combat behemoth plus spellcaster, and taking those 4 lead belchers as opposed to taking a second Iron Blaster?
Not comfortable, I don't think. I think if I was in Throne of Skulls, I would probably be back to double Iron Blaster, and I would definitely be dropping the Man-Eaters for a Tyrant to put back into the unit. We were just saying while you mysteriously disappeared that I'm almost tempted for this Winter Warfare event to drop the Slaughtermaster, put the Spell Eater Axe on the Bruiser, and then whack the Tyrant in there. Just so I've still got all of the magic resistance stuff combined with the Rune Maw, but then I'm magic resistance too once you get through the Rune Maw. And I've also got the super hyper competitive combat character in there to soak the challenges, which is the one real weakness. Like, I can get through on static combat res, sure, but as Alex was saying, a lot of the time these big monsters are going to be +8 or 9 because they just pick my champion to challenge him. I'm not going to give you my BSB or my general. And I just can't compete with that. And they just sort of get regen smashed and pushed off the board slowly by getting or giving ground.
Yeah, and you probably need some more testing, right? Because I don't know if you hear Fred Alice, it's literally like Fatty, the Greater Unclean One, just gets in and with his equivalent ogre blade, just the game's over for Tom. Like basically, unless he
I
rolls
suppose
well.
we do just have to be careful. It is obviously a set of games that you guys have played between
That's
two
what I'm saying.
factions.
That's what I'm saying.
And the consideration is
It's in the abstract, you know. Of
yeah,
the
and I don't think
specific
any faction exists in this comp environment as competitively from a combat character spellcaster environment than Demons does.
Yes, we did
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that as well. We did say that we do. That it is demons have that very
They lucked
select
out.
advantage.
They
in
they
this,
do.
in this setup.
Hence why you're playing them. So, are there any final thoughts, Tom, that you want to share? I suppose before we should move on.
I just want to say to the community, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What would you do? Would you go for the Tyrant over the Slaughtermaster and rely on magic resistance and Ruin Maw? Or would you, just accept my fate and just eat it whenever Alex gives it to me? with the
Tom,
demon?
just preface. Maybe let's ask Alistair. Your next list that you're producing, is it a dragon? Because there are other examples
He
to
won't tell
compare
us.
this against.
No, I don't. Okay, this is going into a discussion that we should save for a
We
future
should, but at
video.
the high level.
But at the high level, no, I'm not bringing a dragon, and there's two reasons behind that.
That's
First of
exactly what a
all-
dragon guy would say.
First of all, we've had this discussion around why Dark Elves have won a bunch of tournaments, and whether or not it's dragon driven,
Gotta
because
hope Matt's
they
listening.
have one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive dragon, particularly because it has hatred versus the other really good type of dragon. Thus, it means that it usually wins combats against them. But apart from that, this time around, I'm a little more laissez-faire about the type of list that I'm bringing. I'm not really thinking about building for advantage. I really want to get a lot of legacy models. Renegades has come back. I want to get a lot of legacy models that I have hiding in storage back on the table and play and have fun with them. And that might mean that I play your multiple small units list and have an awful time because you just run away or you feed one unit a turn to the witch elves. But at the same time, I'm going to play the list that I want to play. Again, we're going into a discussion that should be in another video. But a lot of the time, what we hear from tournament organizers is, I've designed this because I want players to be able to play the lists that they want to play, right? And so I'm going to play the list that I want to play, and that's the
And
long
Alex
and the
is
short
the
of it.
gatekeeper.
And
point-
whether Alex is 100% the gatekeeper, but
the
no.
point being is that perhaps a Slaughter Master against that hyper secretive unit that they're currently talking about might actually be okay, right? Because
Yeah,
it's,
100%.
it's not in that. So
Caveat: I played against Ed, one of the
Oh, yes.
one
How
of
did
the
that go?
guys that listens to this, a good friend of
yeah,
mine.
we've done it a long time.
He wasn't playing with the comp for Winter Warfare, so that's the caveat. And he was playing a big Prince and a level 4 mage, etc. Prince had a dragon. I didn't score a single point, which was great. We had a great time, but I got absolutely thumped. And I
Doesn't
think
count.
that, it doesn't count, but also a tyrant
count.
would have made my life a lot
easier.
more comfortable.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of those learning experiences. I think getting that unit confronted with a very, very sticky, hard to wound character just
Now-
basically is a good counter.
Do
I will
you,
say one thing,
There you go.
Chris. This is aimed at you too, as an ogre player, as top ogre player.
He's not an ogre player.
Is that this is a much more enjoyable ogre list to play against, right? Rather
Okay,
than
What are you saying about my list, man?
Well, I'm just saying that the previous
You've got
If you
regen
wanted
on
to
more units
build-
than I do, mate.
If you wanted to build your list softly for Alex's sake, then by all means, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, no one had fun going into the 9 iron gut block. Just my
It's an
Wolves
oddly
that
pointed
survived the charge
criticism.
last time with rerollable armor saves, bounce the iron guts across the table. But the point being is that I think this is actually a key example that's going to be discussed in every podcast, in every scenario, in every list that takes upon it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't bring my level 4 wizard because I'm bringing a dragon. and then suddenly Tommy rolling around unfettered with magic across the
But
whole.
the only thing that I'm going to point out is for decades, the game functioned in this way.
Yes, true. The
Right?
0 to 1
So,
lord.
so this 50% characters, this whole introduction of, oh, I've got an army and it's based around 2 models. This is a really recent thing, right? This is a really recent phenomenon. And
The
what I'm
caveat
really
there
keen to
is-
explore, what I'm keen to explore before I start shouting at this, what I'm keen to explore is how does this impact the armies that we see? Because you can't, there's no magic Death
Demons.
Stars in the way that 8th edition, with the way that magic worked there. There are no magic Death Stars in the way that you could enhance units in 8th edition. You could go nuts. There are crazy things you could do with units in 8th
Occams,
edition with
yeah,
magic,
yeah.
right?
I think that though it's a little bit of a false comparison because in 8th edition you didn't have monsters inherently because they were really crap. So
Not mounted,
you know,
not mounted monsters.
that's right.
No, you're
so
right.
for example, like we can say, oh well, ogres looked like this in 8th, but that's because no one in their right mind was ever taking a tyrant ever. I mean,
No,
there were some disgusting Slaughtermaster builds in 8th.
Yep.
Disgusting because they could take armor
Yep.
as well. But alas,
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. But my point is, I'm so excited to see what
Oh,
this
definitely.
actually means for different armies and different lists, particularly those like the High Elves, like the Dark Elves, who have seen so much success with flying with one or more flying behemoths. What does that mean for how they approach? What does it mean for Chaos? What does it mean for
Empire
Cameron,
generals
who's-
on a horse.
I mean, maybe we see more Empire Generals on a horse. Who knows? We
Bretonnians.
will
That's
what
only
Tom would
know
like to see.
when
It's just
when
the
the
Bretonnians.
lists come out, and we'll
yeah, I'm
obviously
excited.
look at that.
And I'm
But
really
it'll be
excited
really
to put
good.
the lead belters on the table. And
They're good,
you know,
man. They're good.
They're good. I know. They're great.
My question with the man-eaters in particular is because I understand they are a lot of points, right? They're like
Sorry,
50 something.
253.
Yeah, okay. Are you a little bit concerned that if someone
Yes.
does take a dragon, that they'll just look at you and go, 3 man-eaters, I can probably munch that in 1, maybe 2 combats, and then maybe get stuck into the Mournfang in the flank, probably, and then you've probably lost, 800-ish points?
I mean, that's exactly as every other list operated, though, right?
It's
I've always
true,
had the amount of I've always had the units in the Iron Guts, and anything else just gets eaten. If it wasn't 3 man-eaters, it would just be another Iron Blaster.
True.
So yeah, it doesn't conceptually change the way that the list functions. It's just whether or not the block has enough staying power now.
Yeah.
That's the big question.
And
The
Chris,
man-eaters do a very good job in mission number 1.
yes.
Can I keep them hidden in mission number 2? We'll see.
Well, there's scoring, right? And this comes back to the original point, which is the game is not just one off the dragon rushing the Iron Guts, destroying it and calling it a day. It's, yes, that has to take place, but you better have the rest of your list wiping out the scoring units. You better have more scoring units on the other side. So the man-eaters, so just to give the final piece of commentary on it, in our games, Tom, I was terrified of them, right? Because I was hiding my Slanesh Seekers behind buildings, trying to stack minus saves, because they can
lot
do
of
a
output.
lot of, and
Yeah.
absolutely not going near them in combat, because they would mince.
Well,
my
they
demons.
don't. Yeah, against things that don't really have an armor save, 15 attack, strength 5, weapon skill 4, really good. And then I get to stand and shoot on the if you charge me, or I can do a few shots on the way in before I charge the next turn, etc. I
With
really
the ruby
like
ring.
the unit with the ruby
You know,
ring.
at worst,
exactly.
they're scoring like you play them in a forest. They're a mobile ogre pistol, ruby ring,
battery. Yeah,
battery with higher leadership on there. Anyway, we could be here all night, which I love to do, and debate ogres. Or I'm happy to do a 3-hour expose on Dark Elves.
We'll see. We'll
next
see.
episode.
Move on.
Next episode.
Oh,
Okay.
Dark Elves.
Talking
Look at
about
that.
Dark
Talking about
Yeah.
Dark Elves.
Yeah, and he's talking about how he's an ogre player. The last episode I was on, he put some bloody Lord of the Rings stuff up.
Oh,
And
Tom,
what's
you weren't
this?
here. Tom, if you didn't watch last episode, don't watch it because we did a whole 10 minutes on the history of War Master.
So the running gag is this is an old world podcast, but I play 50,000 different games, and so I probably am always doing hobby that isn't old world related, and that is what I've got here. So I finished 2 units of spearmen, as you can see on the screen. I've currently got another 4 going at once.
For what game?
War Master. So this is 10 mil Warhammer Fantasy.
Tom, were you even alive when War Master was around?
What is that, man? You're like 1 year older than me.
5, but sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so
can
so
move on.
Chris, you've got them painted, right? And
Yeah.
you finally
Yes.
got the details done. You got your 000 brush out.
Yeah.
Eyes on
Where's the
every single
freehand
one
on the
of them.
banners, though?
I
mate? This is
haven't
not-
started the freehand on the banners, but I am actually gonna attempt to do
Oh,
that.
hell yeah, dude. That's great.
Yeah.
That's all I want to see.
Yeah. So that's progress made on that.
All right.
And at the end of the day, like the transfers, if you don't like the way they
True.
look out, you just whack purple over them, get some microsol, and
Yeah.
smack them on. They look great.
Pretty much.
Okay, so good work, Chris. Good effort in 2 weeks getting that done. So we'll probably move to Tom, who you've heard is doing the ogres, lead belchers. Been working hard.
Which
Let's look at
section
your.
of armor
Really?
have you finished this week, Tom?
Let's look at your progress.
Well, let's have a look.
Piece
Oh,
now.
look at that. So this has been my hobby, meticulously highlighting a textbook with this little guy. He's my best friend at the moment.
A lawyer's best
talk us
friend.
Tableau boss.
Talk us through your highlighting technique.
Well, depends on where I am, Alistair. If I'm sitting on a flat surface, you can use the whole of the highlighter. If I'm on my lap on the book, it's just got to be the tip, just the tip. So that's sort of what's going on. Unfortunately, no hobby. I've got exams in a few weeks for law. So here we go.
We need
But I will
you
get
to
it.
graduate so that you can become the rules lawyer
Oh, I don't want to ever
of
be that
the
guy.
group chat.
Ever. You've
Literally.
seen it. When I debate rules, I just go into that fade out. I'm just
That
like, yeah,
zone.
man.
That's
all
all
good.
Now, I have to say, Tom, though, maybe the hobby that you can highlight this week is the cleanest hobbyist desk in existence. In
I
this
mean, he
photo.
only has the one piece of furniture in his bedroom.
You've been in my bedroom. You know that's not true. Yeah, no, it is a clean desk. I like to keep a clean environment. It's
Keeps
very
the
important.
mind clear.
That's right.
Okay. Alistair, your hobby pick?
Yeah, I don't know if you have a slide. If you have a slide for me, in the 2 weeks since our last episode, in the joy of all renters, I've been told by my landlord that they want to move back in to the property that I'm in. So hobby is taking a hiatus
Yes.
for the near future while I find a new place to live. But let's not distract from what you're dying to talk about, which is your
myself.
your current project. Talk us through it.
Wow.
There's hardly enough flesh colors on those tentacles for me.
Yes, we've been over this. So this
whole model just bums me out so hard. It's
Only
just
because you
like
just
my
hate Nurgle
actual
so much.
Worst nightmare. I think Nurgle are disgusting.
Well, we're moving down week by week on the development of the army. And this is tracking the tale of 4 gamers as we head towards Winter Warfare on here. So, Fatty,
All
as
4
he's...
gamers are Alex, by the way. But go
Yes, yeah, for my
Playing a different faction of Nurgle.
But yes, so I've managed to, get him probably mostly painted up at this stage. I think I'd be happy. I've got to do a bit of OSL on the base for the energy like I've done on the Fury bases on the side. But what I want to do is not go for that traditional Nurgle, like, green, GW green, which I just
Very,
think
very
is, like,
bright.
horrific.
Yeah.
It's bright and it's generic.
This looks very cool and sort of energetic and wispy.
Yeah. Well, I think Chris was talking about like more of a grim, dark
Yeah.
Nurgle. I rather embarrassingly didn't read much Nurgle lore many years ago, but didn't realize that Nurgle is actually more about the regeneration of life form than it is about destruction. And the whole idea behind him is that he kills things to regenerate them back. And so what I wanted to do is go for this. Well, perhaps he's a vessel of Nurgle and he's diseased, and so he's got chaotic energy that's regenerating him up to his, call it Nurgle green form, which is what we got here. So I'm probably going to add a bit of cyans and all these other sexy colors.
I wonder
to it.
if intentionally or otherwise the lore for the old world, as I'm sure everyone is up to date on, is very much the part of the reason why you don't see demonic hordes everywhere is the winds of magic are not as strongly blowing. And it does have a sense of it's either shambling out of the dark, which is a really, really nice image to think of. You're an empire soldier marching along, and you hear the wails and the giggles of Nurgle echoing through the trees, and this thing just comes shambling out of the dark at you.
I've always loved the grimdark version of Nurgle, and also every other version that isn't kind of the generic GW one is good. Like in Horus Heresy, the Death Guard, I thought their paint scheme is actually quite nice as well. But this looks honestly so fantastic.
It looks sick.
It looks unsettling, which is exactly what I hope a Greater Demon would look on the table. And I think when it's paired with it's the centerpiece, right? When it's paired with the rest of the army, I think it's just going to look incredible.
How are you going to do the tentacles, Alex?
Well, look, Alistair wants me to do them a particular.
I have steered away from my penis orientation, and I'm very much into these are his internal organs spilling out. So I feel that
it should be like a
there's room
glistening
for,
dark red sort
purples
of
and purples and
Well,
maybe a couple more deeper greens, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually have this demon blood from Vallejo game color here, but it's actually quite a glossy finish.
I
which
think
shocked
gloss
me.
actually is what you want on him because
that. You want it a bit
yeah,
wet,
you
basically.
want to really emphasize that he's got, I guess, fresh guts spilling out,
Oh,
and
this
you
is
want
so
that whole.
cool. Like, what are we even talking about?
But you want that glistening blood effect on there.
that sheen.
Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it.
Offal, that sheen that Offal gets after it's been sitting in the sun for a little while. Like
Well-
Tom would know all about that. But I said as much in our chat. I want to feel sticky just looking at him.
Yeah,
that's
can't
that's what
handle
I
this
want
anymore.
for this model
Well,
of yours that you're doing.
I do want to darken down the rocks a bit. They're a bit too bright because it's kind of all. I want them to be darkened to him to be the centerpiece. But this is, again, the oil washes. And the other thing I wanted to do, and I've done them on the Furies as well, is whenever I'm doing metallics, such as the silvers and whatnot, I try to add inks to them to give them different shading effects. So actually on this blade, I added some Scale 75 blue ink, which in itself is actually quite a satin, almost glossy finish if you're not careful about it, if you apply it straight. So that actually worked out really well with the metallics because it
looks fantastic.
It kept the sheen almost to it. So without adding in I've seen people try to add contrast paint to it. So yeah, guys, give it a go. Give metallics a go with inks. If you want to get that, there's obviously a blue effect there.
So just to touch on the base, because this is obviously not an official GW model. This is a 3D print. Is he actually attached to the base already?
He is. He is. So the Great Unclean one can be on a range of bases.
Yep.
But his biggest base is 150 by 100, not 100 by 150. It's the wide 150 first, 100 deep. So, which is great for his thematic scheme. Same size as a
For
Soul
thematics
Grinder.
or for travel mystical pathways?
Well,
TM,
he can't get it,
TMP's
but,
been
yeah.
limited now.
Infernal
So
Gateway, I think is
Sorry,
what
it's
Tom's
Infernal Gateway.
Infernal Gateway,
Yeah.
sure.
Yes, but I would argue within the same realms of limiting, it's probably the same. I don't think you're getting a hard pass from Infernal Gateway, but just for blocking purposes, it's great. But yes, we're going for the hobby, Chris. It's a hobby base Nothing to do with gameplay. Nothing to do with gameplay.
Nothing.
Purely.
Bring
on
out
but
that
yes, he's
6-inch
on his
steering
base.
No, it looks fantastic.
It does. It looks beautiful.
That is it, guys.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode 4 of the Old World Behemoths podcast. If you've made it this far, we are now ticking over into an hour and 40 minutes.
Not
Thank
our
you
longest.
so much. Not our longest. We're getting more efficient as time goes on, but thank you so much for watching. We very much appreciate you. If you'd like to become a patron, you'll find a link to that in the show notes. If you'd like to check out our wonderful graphic design support, that link will also be within our show notes. But otherwise, get in touch, send us an email, drop us a comment below this video if you're on YouTube or anywhere that you might find this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. As Tom has pointed out, he would love some feedback on his Ogre list and what you guys think.
Always.
You may do a little bit differently if you've gotten a bit sick of thinking about what we might do with it differently. But on behalf of all of the Behemoths here, thank you again so much for watching or listening. We will catch you again next time.
Take care.
See ya.